Alright, here goes. I never thought I'd be the guy writing about this stuff, but I guess life has a way of hitting you upside the head when you least expect it. My name's Mark, and I've been married to Sarah for almost 9 years. 9 years of what I thought was a solid, committed marriage. We met in college, fell in love fast, and built what I thought was a pretty good life together. We've got a nice home, good jobs, and a little dog named Milo who basically acts as our child. But over the past few months, something changed. Sarah started acting differently. At first, it was small stuff. She got a new gym membership and suddenly started going every day. She'd always been active, but now it was like a new obsession. She'd come home later and later, usually with a vague excuse about how the gym was crowded or she grabbed a coffee afterward. I didn't think much of it at first. People go through phases, right? But then she started being weird with her phone. She was always glued to it, laughing at messages or swiping quickly out of apps when I walked by. And whenever I asked what was so funny, she'd brush it off with a smirk, saying it was just Jessica, or work stuff. Even when I tried to look at her phone casually, she'd get defensive, saying, "Don't you trust me?" and pull it away. It was like I wasn't even allowed to glance at her screen without her flipping out. I kept trying to convince myself I was just being paranoid. After all, Sarah had never given me any reason to doubt her. But as time went on, those little things started adding up, and a sinking feeling set in. I felt like I was going crazy, questioning everything, wondering if I was just imagining it. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was really, really wrong. Things came to a head one Saturday morning. Sarah had left early for one of her gym sessions, and I was at home doing some cleaning. I don't usually mess with her stuff, but while dusting the dresser, I noticed she'd left her laptop open. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it, but a chat window popped up on the screen, and her friend Jessica's name was nowhere to be found. Instead, the name was Brad. I'd never heard her mention anyone named Brad, and curiosity got the best of me. I glanced at the conversation, telling myself I was just being overly paranoid, but what I saw hit me like a freight train. The messages between them were anything but innocent. They were flirty, intimate, and way too familiar. They talked about their last night together and made plans to meet up again. And then, the words that made my blood turn cold. "Can't wait to see you later for some real fun, winky face." It was all there in black and white. I could barely process it. My mind was racing, heart pounding as I scrolled back up, and it only got worse. They talked about specific days she'd been at the gym, or working late, all excuses she'd used with me. Every moment, every excuse, it all started lining up like pieces of a puzzle I'd never wanted to solve. I felt sick. I wanted to slam the laptop shut and pretend I'd never seen it. But the truth was staring me in the face, and there was no going back. My wife was cheating on me. All the suspicions, the doubts, the gut feelings, they weren't just paranoia. They were real, and now I had proof. I sat there in shock, staring at the screen, my mind reeling. It felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. The woman I'd spent almost a decade with, the woman I'd built a life with, was lying to me. And the worst part? She'd been lying to my face, making me feel like I was the one with trust issues, when all along, she was the one hiding something. When Sarah got back that afternoon, I was still reeling. My mind was spinning with a mix of anger, disbelief, and heartache. I was ready to confront her, but I couldn't seem to find the words. She walked in, casually chatting about her great workout, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I looked at her and said, "So, how was Brad today?" The color drained from her face. She stammered, What are you talking about? Who's Brad?" But her eyes gave her away. There was a flicker of panic, the kind you see when someone knows they're caught. "Don't play dumb with me, Sarah. I saw the messages. I know you've been seeing him. All those times you said you were at the gym or working late, were you even at the gym at all?" She paused, then switched gears, her expression hardening. You had no right to go through my laptop, Mark. That's a huge invasion of privacy. I almost laughed in disbelief. Here she was, caught red-handed, and she was trying to turn it around on me. I'd seen enough movies and read enough stories to know this tactic: deflect and make me the villain. But I wasn't going to let her twist things. Not this time. You're really going to make this about me checking your messages? You've been lying to me, Sarah. I trusted you, and you've been sneaking around with some guy behind my back. How long has this been going on? She crossed her arms, throwing out every excuse she could think of. First, she said it wasn't that serious. Just a harmless flirtation. Then, she tried to say she only started seeing Brad because I wasn't giving her enough attention. She even threw in some ridiculous excuse about how she needed space, and wasn't sure about us anymore. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. She wasn't apologetic or remorseful. Instead, she was defensive, trying to justify what she'd done by blaming me, as if my supposed shortcomings were a free pass for her to betray me. It was like she couldn't admit she'd done anything wrong. I wanted her to at least own up to it, to show a hint of regret, but all I got were deflections and excuses. At that moment, I realized something that cut even deeper than the betrayal itself. She didn't respect me. She didn't even see what she'd done as a real problem. After our confrontation, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I stormed out of the house, unable to process the whirlwind of emotions flooding through me. The initial shock morphed into an overwhelming wave of anger, followed by a gut-wrenching sadness. I drove around aimlessly, fighting back tears while replaying our entire relationship in my mind like some twisted movie reel. How could she do this to me? How could I have missed the signs for so long? Every little moment came flooding back, the affectionate kisses that now felt like lies, the cozy evenings we'd spent together that now felt tainted. It was hard to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the one who had been deceiving me. I felt betrayed on so many levels. It wasn't just about the physical act of cheating. It was the emotional betrayal, too. The shared dreams, the laughter, and everything we built together felt shattered. After driving for what felt like hours, I finally parked in a quiet spot at the park near our home. I sat in my car, staring at the trees swaying gently in the wind, trying to make sense of everything. Milo, our dog, jumped into my lap and licked my face, grounding me in a way. I took a deep breath, feeling a bit of comfort in his presence, but it didn't erase the pain gnawing at my insides. Once I returned home, I found Sarah sitting in silence, waiting for me. I couldn't look her in the eye. I felt this strange combination of anger and pity. I was furious at her betrayal, yet part of me felt sorry for the person she'd become. She had spent so much energy lying and scheming instead of confronting her own issues. "Mark," she said, her voice softer now, "can we talk about this?" I wanted to scream. Talk about what? How she felt justified in betraying me? How she thought her actions were somehow acceptable. But instead, I just nodded, feeling numb. She launched into her defense again, but this time, it felt different. I could see a hint of vulnerability in her eyes, but it was overshadowed by the desperate need to maintain her facade. She claimed that she just wanted to feel desired, and that our marriage had lost its spark. But all I could hear were her excuses, and it felt like she was trying to rewrite the narrative to absolve herself of guilt. The emotions inside me swirled like a storm. One moment, I was filled with rage, wanting to confront her about everything she had done. The next, I felt sad for her, for the life she had chosen and how far she had strayed from who I thought she was. I was hurt and angry, yes, but I was also left feeling helpless in the face of her denial. At that moment, I realized that even if I wanted to, I couldn't save her from herself. I was caught in this whirlwind of emotions, trying to navigate my own heartbreak while she spun her web of lies. I felt utterly alone, and the weight of the betrayal settled heavily on my chest, making it hard to breathe. It was an emotional roller coaster I never wanted to ride, and I couldn't see a way off. As the days turned into a week, I found myself in a fog. Sarah and I tried to talk things through, but every conversation felt like we were going in circles. I'd ask her how she could betray me, and she turned it back on me, claiming I hadn't been present or attentive enough. I began to realize that her way of dealing with this wasn't going to change, no matter how many heart-to-hearts we attempted. I was wrestling with my own pain while she seemed more focused on justifying her actions than taking responsibility. After one particularly painful discussion where she dismissed my feelings yet again, something inside me snapped. I had been trying to salvage the relationship, but it felt like I was fighting a battle I couldn't win. That night, I made a decision. I needed to put my own well-being first. I was done with the excuses, the blame shifting, and the lies. It was clear that Sarah wasn't going to change or admit her wrongdoing. I realized I couldn't keep living in this state of uncertainty, hurt, and betrayal. The next day, I called a few friends and family members to talk it out. They were supportive, reminding me that I deserved better and that it was okay to prioritize myself. With their encouragement, I decided it was time to move out. I needed space to breathe and think without the constant reminders of Sarah's betrayal haunting me at every turn. When I told Sarah my decision, she reacted with disbelief and anger. "You can't be serious! You're just going to throw everything away?" she yelled, her voice rising in a mix of desperation and rage. But I stood firm. "You've already thrown it away, Sarah. You broke our vows. I can't stay in a relationship built on lies." The argument escalated, but I refused to let her manipulate me any longer. I packed up some essentials and made arrangements to stay with a friend temporarily. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I was leaving behind the life we'd built together, but I was also stepping away from the chaos she had created. Moving out was an emotional whirlwind. I felt liberated yet haunted by what had just transpired. There were moments when I second-guessed myself, wondering if I was making the right choice. Was I being too hasty? But deep down, I knew I had to prioritize my own mental health and happiness. I couldn't continue to exist in a relationship where I was constantly questioning myself and my worth. As the days passed, I began to find my footing again. I started spending more time with friends, rediscovering old hobbies, and focusing on what made me happy outside of my marriage. The road ahead was still rocky, but I felt stronger with each passing day. I realized that I had the power to shape my own future, free from the pain of betrayal. It was a turning point, and I was determined to move forward, no matter how difficult the journey might be. As I settled into my new routine, I took time to reflect on everything that had happened. It was a roller coaster ride of emotions, from the initial shock of discovering Sarah's betrayal to the pain of confronting her lies, and finally to the relief of reclaiming my own space. While the experience had been devastating, it also offered me a valuable perspective on relationships and self-worth. I realized that I had invested so much in trying to make my marriage work, often at the expense of my own happiness. I had overlooked red flags because I wanted to believe in the love we had built together. But now, looking back, I understood that relationships thrive on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. When one person starts to lie, the foundation begins to crumble, and no amount of denial can fix it. Through all of this, I learned that I could no longer let someone else's actions define my worth. It was empowering to see that I had the strength to walk away from a toxic situation. I deserved a partner who valued me as much as I valued them, someone who would communicate openly and work through challenges together rather than resorting to deceit. I also recognized the importance of surrounding myself with supportive friends and family. They were my lifeline during this tumultuous time, reminding me that I was not alone and that I had people who genuinely cared about my well-being. Their support helped me heal and provided me with the courage to move forward. If I could offer advice to anyone else going through a similar situation, it would be this: trust your instincts. If something feels off in your relationship, don't ignore it. Communicate openly with your partner, and if they deflect or refuse to engage, take that as a significant red flag. You deserve someone who respects you and is willing to work through issues together. And if betrayal does occur, know that it's okay to walk away. It's okay to prioritize your happiness and mental health over a relationship that is causing you pain. As I move forward, I'm embracing this new chapter of my life. I'm focusing on rebuilding myself and rediscovering what brings me joy. I may not know what the future holds, but I do know that I'm ready to face it head on, with a clearer understanding of what I want and need in my next relationship. It's a journey of healing, growth, and ultimately, reclaiming my happiness. As the weeks turned into months, I began to embrace the idea of rediscovery. I had spent so long wrapped up in the complexities of my marriage that I'd almost forgotten who I was outside of it. With Sarah out of the picture, I felt like I was finally waking up from a long sleep, like a fog had lifted and I could see the world more clearly. I started to explore my interests again, things I used to love but had set aside. I joined a local hiking group, where I met some great people who shared my passion for the outdoors. Being in nature felt like a healing balm for my soul. There was something cathartic about walking trails, feeling the sun on my skin, and breathing in the fresh air. It reminded me that life was full of beauty, even in the wake of heartbreak. I also took up painting. I had dabbled in art during college, and I found it to be an incredible outlet for my emotions. Each brushstroke became a way to express what I had felt over the past year: the anger, sadness, and eventually, the hope. I painted my feelings onto the canvas, and it felt like I was shedding layers of hurt with each new piece. In the process, I began to cultivate new friendships. The hiking group was welcoming, and I found myself laughing again, truly laughing, not just out of obligation or habit. Those moments reminded me that joy was still possible, even after betrayal. I opened up to some of these new friends about what I'd been through, and their understanding and encouragement helped me feel less isolated. One night, while out with friends, I met someone named Lisa. We connected over shared interests, and it felt refreshing to talk to someone without the weight of my past looming over us. We exchanged numbers and started texting. I was cautious at first, still nursing my wounds, but there was a spark that reminded me that love and connection could exist again. As I continued to grow and heal, I found myself reflecting on the lessons learned from my marriage. I became more aware of what I wanted in a partner. Honesty, communication, and mutual respect were non-negotiables. I realized that I wouldn't settle for anything less in the future, and that clarity brought me a sense of empowerment. But the journey wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when I felt a wave of sadness wash over me, memories of Sarah creeping in at unexpected moments. I would find myself thinking of the life we once had and the love I thought would last forever. During those times, I would remind myself of why I had made the decision to leave, focusing on the importance of prioritizing my happiness. Every time I felt that tug of nostalgia, I would turn to my painting or hit the trails, letting nature help me process my emotions. It was a cycle of healing and growth, and I was beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I was learning that while heartbreak was painful, it could also be a powerful catalyst for change. As the months passed, I settled into a rhythm of healing that felt right for me. The weight of my past was still there, but it no longer defined me. I began to recognize the resilience that had been forged in the fires of my heartbreak. I had walked away from a relationship that had caused me pain, and in doing so, I had opened the door to a new chapter filled with potential. The more I engaged with life outside of my marriage, the more I found myself looking forward to the future. I continued to develop my friendship with Lisa, and as we spent more time together, I felt a spark of hope. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and there was an ease between us that felt refreshing. It was a reminder that not all connections were rooted in betrayal and hurt. One afternoon, while hiking a trail we'd been wanting to explore together, I opened up to Lisa about my past. I shared my experience with Sarah, the pain of betrayal, and how it had shaped my perspective on relationships. To my relief, Lisa listened with empathy and understanding. She shared her own experiences of love and loss, and I felt a bond grow between us that was built on honesty and mutual respect. As we reached the summit, I paused to take in the breathtaking view. It felt like a metaphor for my life. After climbing through the tough terrain, I was finally standing at the top, able to see how far I had come. The horizon stretched out before me, full of possibilities, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement about what was to come. Eventually, I took a leap of faith and asked Lisa out on an official date. It was nerve-wracking, but she said yes with a smile that lit up my world. Our first date was simple: dinner at a local restaurant followed by a walk under the stars. As we talked and laughed, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't experienced in a long time. I realized I was ready to embrace love again, this time with a clearer understanding of what I needed and deserved. Reflecting on my journey, I came to appreciate the lessons that betrayal had taught me. I learned the importance of setting boundaries, recognizing my worth, and not ignoring red flags in future relationships. I had rediscovered my passions and found new joy in life's simple moments. Most importantly, I had learned that healing is not linear, it comes in waves, and that's okay. If there's one thing I would share with anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation, it's that you are stronger than you think. Heartbreak can feel like the end, but it can also be the beginning of something beautiful. Take the time you need to heal, surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to seek new experiences. Your happiness is worth fighting for, and there is always a path forward, even when it feels impossible. As I stepped into this new chapter with Lisa by my side, I felt ready to embrace whatever life had in store. My heart was open, not just to love but to the lessons and growth that come from navigating the complexities of relationships. I was no longer defined by my past. I was the author of my own story, and the pages ahead promised to be filled with hope, resilience, and love.